Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, you guys know we love him, listening to the show, fired up about what Mark Zuckerberg said in his letter, wanted to weigh in, was texting with me during the break. He is called into the program. Senator Johnson, first of all, it's good to hear from you again. Last time we saw you, we were in Milwaukee doing a event. It was a lot of fun. Many of our listeners there showed up to hear Buck and I and you all kind of sit and talk about the issues of the day. But I think this story is so important, and I know you are fired up about this as much as I am. I think it's the biggest story of the 21st century. Somebody in the FBI ordered a code red. They knew that the laptop was real. They went to Facebook. They went to Twitter. We tend to focus on the big tech companies and their failures, but you experienced this. When the FBI sits you down and tells you something, I think it's natural that the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world and the Jack Dorseys of the world are going to believe the FBI. They lied, and nobody's been held accountable for it. You experienced it yourself. Tell us about what happened to you in the run-up for 2020. And are you as angry, I think the answer is yes, as I am, that still nobody inside of the FBI has been held accountable for rigging the election and the lies that they told in 2020?
Well, I'm way more angry than you are, but I appreciate you highlighting this. No, so it all started, and by the way, it's much deeper than the FBI, and I'll get to that, but it started when they seized that computer. On the way out, the FBI agent turned around, and I'm paraphrasing, said, our experience, Mr. McIsaac, is that people who don't talk about these things don't get in trouble, something to that effect.
Yep.
So they already started, tampering there. Senator Grassley and I, individually, in August of 2020, I'm walking back from a vote. My staff was coming up to me and saying, "Hey, Senator, we got a briefing with the FBI here in the skiff." So what are you talking about? Well, they want to brief you. So it was an unsolicited briefing. It was a joke. We had, I think, 6 briefers. They said we were targets of Russian disinformation. I said, okay, do you have any? I mean, we'd been accused for months because we were investigating Hunter. We'd been accused for months by our Senate colleagues in the media of soliciting and disseminating Russian disinformation. So here we are in August, and the FBI saying, hey, we're targets of Russian disinformation. I just roll in my eyes and go, okay, do you have some evidence about this? And, they kind of look at each other and, they had nothing for me. So now I'm pissed. Okay. Pardon my French.
No, fire away.
Who told you to brief me? I want to know who directed this briefing. And they kind of look at each other and, interagency. And we have written multiple letters asking who directed that briefing. I've asked it in open hearings with Director Wray. To this day, we do not know who directed that unsolicited briefing where, they were sabotaging our investigation of Hunter Biden. And quite honestly, the sabotage in case the Hunter Biden laptop ever surfaced, which, by the way, it did. The day after we issued our report, John McIsaac finally felt safe enough, because he was warned earlier, safe enough to let somebody know he had this. And so he contacted our office. Now, we thought it was pretty odd. Again, it could have been Russian disinformation. It could have been a plant. We didn't know. So we went to the FBI to find out, what do you know about this? They gave us the runaround literally for weeks. Well, the guy in charge of this was on vacation, to the point where McIsaac got impatient, and he turned it over to Rudy Giuliani's attorney, who then turned over the New York Post. The rest is history. But again, the sabotage worked. We could have taken that computer immediately and maybe started revealing things again. We do our due diligence, so we probably wouldn't have been acting as quickly as the New York Post. But what we have since found out is that we don't know who, but it was somebody in the office of the Director of National Intelligence. I don't think it was John Radcliffe, but it was somebody inside the deep state, inside that agency, that potentially orchestrated all this. But to this day, and that was August of 2020. Here we are, August of 2024, 4 years later. We don't know who directed a secure briefing to 2 U.S. senators. At the time, chairmen of our committee.
This is so incredibly important.
That's how unaccountable they are.
This is so incredibly important, and I'm glad you called in. And I just want to hammer this home again for all of our listeners. The FBI had Hunter Biden's laptop since December of 2019. That's when they took it from John Paul McIsaac. To your point, when they talked to you in August of 2020, they knew the laptop was real. When the story came out from the New York Post, and most of us heard about it for the first time in October of 2020, They knew the laptop was real. They were seeding the idea that it was Russian disinformation for months to these social media companies, to people out there in the larger universe. Heck, you saw this story. Was it the Aspen Institute had a pretend story about Russian disinformation that was out there to try to influence the election? And you know this, Senator. I think this is so important, too. They treated a few Facebook ads that the Russian entities bought for a few $1,000s, few $100s, if I remember, like it stole the election for Trump in 2016. I bought Facebook ads. Trust me, they're freaking expensive, and you got to buy a ton of them to get in front of anybody, okay? I've done this as part of my business, running a media company. This is, I mean, you're angry about it. I'm fired up about it. I think it is the biggest lie in any of our lives, the biggest rig job that has ever happened. And by the way, the New York Times, the Washington Post, they won't even hardly cover this right now. Can you imagine, Senator, how they'd be covering it if Trump, imagine, just flip the parties. If Trump had been censoring information through Facebook that disfavored his political positions, and if the FBI had briefed and protected one of the Trump kids and the Trump family from revelations like these, that they would put Trump in prison. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt about it. Right now, the New York Times, the Washington Post won't even cover it.
But Clay, understand how pervasive this. So we had articles written against us. That we were, stooges of Russia.
They leaked to try to turn you into Russian stooges. That's very important.
Oh yeah, our ranking members of the committee issued a report that we were Russian stooges. Okay. Fast forward, it was the intelligence community that issued the letter saying that the laptop had all the earmarks of a Russian information campaign.
Yep.
So that's what I'm saying. This is way deeper than just the FBI. This goes into the intelligence community. There ties into the Democrat elected members of the Senate who, I had an op-ed written, that I was so toxic the CIA wouldn't even brief me. No, they wouldn't brief me a third time because they'd already briefed us, or a second time. They already briefed us once and said that Andrei Teleshenko is not a problem to get testimony from. So again, I'm getting into levels of detail you don't need to consider, but just understand how pervasive this is. The ties into the media, into the big tech, into Democrat members of Congress. It was all orchestrated. It was all coordinated. But Senator Grass and I, again, we were vilified for the entire year of 2020 because we were investigating Hunter Biden. And again, we were accused of soliciting and disseminating Russian disinformation, get the unscrewed briefing, and then we see what the 51 intelligence officials did on the cusp of the election to make sure that this thing was completely buried just long enough so Joe Biden got elected, and the results, of course, have been disastrous.
Why do you think Zuckerberg wrote his letter now?
I guess they have the goods on him. Yeah, I have no idea.
It's a good question, right?
It's just good work by Jim Jordan. Continue to press this.
Some people are saying they think it's because Trump's going to win and Zuckerberg wants to get back on his good side. Obviously, we didn't even focus, but a lot of this, and I'm sure this impacted you too. I know it impacted us. A lot of the COVID stuff that they were restricting, they were censoring, that the Biden administration was acting on. That's another big part of the letter. But to me, that's a huge story. That standalone is a huge story. But the rig job here, the FBI and or other elements of our deep state telling everyone, hey, this is Russian disinformation when they knew it was real, is a scandal unlike anything any of us have ever seen related to an American presidential election in our lives. I mean, to you, is this the biggest scandal you can think of related to an American presidential election? Because I think they rigged it to get Biden in office, right? There's no way Biden gets in office if this is covered honestly as the story it should have been.
Yeah, since 2020, I've been saying that Russia and China couldn't even dream of interfering on an election to the extent that our own federal agencies did. No, this is a huge story. This is the most grotesque interference in the election. It all started with Hillary Clinton, paying for the Steele dossier. The FBI knew that the subsource there was somebody they were investigating as a Russian spy. They knew it was all BS, but they continued, started the Mueller investigation. Again, they put our country through political turmoil that hasn't ended up, and this is all caused by the deep state. of the corruption of Democrat politicians like Hillary Clinton, people in the deep state like James Comey, all the folks, Strzok and Page and McCabe and all those folks, and they're getting away with it. I mean, the players in it are actually on MSNBC. The former CIA directors. I mean, again, they're getting away with it because they control the media, they control the narrative, and people have to open their eyes to what is happening to our country. And God bless Tulsi Gabbard, God bless our RFK Jr. that their eyes have been opened and they're rejecting the corruption of their former party.
Senator Ron Johnson, thank you for fighting the good fight every single day. I appreciate you listening as well and calling in and helping on this story, because the minute I read that Zuckerberg letter yesterday, I had steam coming out of my ears, and I couldn't wait to come on and talk about this and reinforce what lies we have been told by people being paid by our taxpayer dollars inside of our government.
Well, thanks for highlighting it.
Senator Ron Johnson, great state of Wisconsin. We'll talk to you again soon. Thank you for listening. Thanks for calling in. I want to tell you right now, if you haven't heard about Coin yet, cool new credit card for conservatives. Coin spelled with a G, as in COIGN. Backed by Visa, gives you 1% back on every dollar you spend, while also supporting causes that align with your values, with my values, with Senator Ron Johnson, who you just heard call in. Mine gets a ton of use in the Travis household, one of the nonprofit organizations they're supporting right now, dog rescue training organization by the name of Rescue 22. They rescue dogs, train them to become service dogs for disabled veterans. Sign up now for America's conservative credit card at coin.com. That's COIGN.com. Be sure to select Clay and Buck in the How Did You Hear About Us section on the website. Again, coin.com, COIGN.com. Go to coin.com/disclosures for full details.